I read a stat recently that the average American spends about 6 hours a day staring at a screen. And yeah, that's me. My life is just perpetual input. A constant, endless stream of information, notifications, and noise. It feels like a low hum of anxiety that never ever turns off. And finding real peace and quiet feels like it's getting harder and harder. That can't be good for you. So I decided to escape. I went to what's been called the quietest place in the United States for 24 hours, with no phone, just to see what would happen to my brain. The journey into the Hoh rainforest in Washington's Olympic National Park is like traveling back in time. With every mile, the cell signal disappears, cities shrink into towns, towns melt into logging roads, and finally, the roads just dissolve into a cathedral of green. The air itself feels different. It gets heavy, almost thick with moisture and the smell of damp earth. This is one of the largest temperate rainforests in the US, and it gets an average of 12 to 14 feet of rain every year. You can feel it. I parked the car, and the crunch of gravel under my tires felt like the last man-made sound I'd hear for a while. This was it. The moment of truth. My hand just hovered over my phone. It's a lifeline, right? A connection to everything. But it's also a leash. I held down the power button, watched the screen go dark, and this surprising wave of pure panic washed over me. It honestly felt like a part of my brain just shut down. I shoved it deep into my pack, zipped it up, and took my first steps onto the Hoh River Trail. And that's when it hit me. The silence. It's not an absence of sound at all. It's a presence. It's a physical thing that presses in on you. The forest floor, covered in this thick carpet of moss and ferns, seems to just swallow sound. The trail leads you about 3.2 miles toward a spot that an acoustic ecologist named Gordon Hempton identified back in 2005. He calls it the 1 square inch of silence, marked by a small red stone on a log, a place he considers the quietest in the country. But I didn't need to find that exact stone. The entire forest felt like a sanctuary. My own footsteps, which I never even notice in the city, were suddenly deafening. The rustle of my jacket was a roar. The sound of my own breathing, an entire soundscape. For the first hour, that's all I could hear, myself. And it was deeply, deeply uncomfortable. The deeper I walked, the more the forest enveloped me. Towering Sitka spruce and western hemlock trees, some soaring over 300 feet tall, create this canopy that filters the light into a soft, ethereal green. Moss hangs from literally every branch like ancient, silent storytellers. The sheer scale of it all makes you feel insignificant, but in the best way possible. After a few hours, though, the initial anxiety started to shift into something else. Extreme boredom. My brain, which is so used to constant stimulation, was practically screaming for a distraction. I kept getting the urge to check my phone for a notification I knew wasn't there. I thought about work emails, my social media feeds, texts I forgot to reply to. My mind, was a noisy, frantic mess, a total contrast to the profound stillness all around me. I guess when you're in a truly quiet place, you're forced to listen to yourself. And apparently, I was a chaotic mess of thoughts. But I pushed through it. I forced myself to just sit on a fallen log, a giant that must have been a century old, and I just listened. At first, nothing. Then, slowly, the world started to open up. I heard the delicate trickle of water seeping through the moss. I heard the distant call of a bird, and then another one answering it. I could hear the faint buzz of an insect, the whisper of wind way up in the canopy. My senses, which have been dulled by years of noise pollution, were slowly and painfully coming back online. As the afternoon turned into evening, things started to get weird. The lack of sensory input seemed to be making my brain invent its own. In the deep twilight, I heard a sound like a heavy footstep, a loud whoomph that seemed to come from the ground itself. My heart hammered in my chest. I scanned the trees, trying to find the source. Was it one of the park's famous Roosevelt elk? The park is home to the largest unmanaged herd in the Pacific Northwest. Or maybe a black bear foraging in the undergrowth? I saw nothing. The forest was perfectly still. The sound never came back. A few minutes later, I thought I heard a voice, a faint whisper right at the edge of my hearing. Again, nothing. Some experts say that in the absence of external stimuli, our brain can misinterpret weak signals and create auditory hallucinations. It's unnerving to realize that the reality you experience can be invented by your own mind out of thin air. I set up my tiny, simple camp as total darkness fell. The night in the Hoh rainforest is a completely different level of quiet. It is absolute. I was just lying in my tent, and the loudest thing for miles was the ringing in my own ears. There were no cars, no sirens, no constant hum of electricity that we're so used to we don't even notice it anymore. And for the first time in as long as I can remember, the noise inside my head started to quiet down too. The frantic, looping thoughts about my to-do list, my anxieties, my digital life. They just faded. They didn't have the fuel of constant input to keep them burning. The silence wasn't empty. It was a space for my mind to finally rest and reset. Some research on mice has suggested that a couple hours of silence might promote the growth of new cells in the hippocampus, the part of the brain linked to memory and emotion. It's thought to reduce stress hormones and allow the brain to recharge. I didn't sleep much, not out of fear, but because of this strange, calm alertness. I felt more awake than I had in years. When the first light of dawn started filtering through the canopy, it felt like a revelation. The forest slowly came alive with the sound of birdsong. A Pacific wren started singing somewhere nearby, its complex melody echoing through the still air. And in that moment, I got it. I came here looking for silence, thinking it was an absence of something. But it's not. True silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything else. It's the presence of yourself, your thoughts, and the subtle, beautiful world that is so easily drowned out. The goal isn't to escape the world, but to actually hear it for the first time. Packing up and walking out of the forest was a completely different experience. I felt this deep sense of calm, a clarity I haven't felt in a very long time. The world seemed more vibrant. The greens were greener, the air fresher. I wasn't fighting the silence anymore. I was part of it. The first sound of civilization was a distant airplane, a faint hum that just sliced through the peace. Before this trip, I wouldn't have even registered it. Now, it felt like a violent intrusion. Then, closer to the trailhead, the sound of a car door slamming felt like a gunshot. Then came the moment I was both dreading and craving. I pulled out my phone and held down the power button. The screen flickered to life, and with it came the flood. A deluge of notifications, emails, texts, news alerts, social media updates. A waterfall of demands and opinions and information that I had survived just fine without for 24 hours. My body had a physical reaction. My shoulders tensed up, and I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. The low hum of anxiety was back. The peace I'd found felt so fragile, so easily shattered. The digital world seemed garish and loud, and for the first time, it felt completely optional. My 24 hours in the Ho rainforest taught me our minds are a lot like this forest. They need quiet to thrive. They need moments without input to process, to grow, and to heal. We've become so addicted to the noise and the constant distraction that we've forgotten how to just be with ourselves. I'm not saying everyone needs to ditch their phone and run off to the woods. But this whole experience proved to me that silence is a resource, and it's just as vital as clean air and water. And it's a resource that's quickly disappearing. It's a practice, a discipline, and it might just be the key to finding some clarity in our incredibly noisy world. The lesson for me was simple. Unplug, let yourself get a little bored, and see what happens. If you enjoyed this little adventure into the quiet, and if you ever feel that need to disconnect, consider subscribing for more journeys like this one. I'd be genuinely curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think you would experience, or what would you be most afraid of in 24 hours of total silence? Thanks for watching.